Alright, Destiny 2 The Witch Queen is here, and with it, there's been a change in the way the game does HDR, and there seems to be some concerns and issues with it, so I thought I would do some full testing here using all three platforms, PC, PS5, and Xbox Series X. And on the Xbox, I tested both HDR10 and Dolby Vision. And there are some things here that you really should know about, especially how to do the new HDR settings for all the platforms and different TVs you could be using. I'm going to start with PC, then cover the PlayStation, and then the Xbox Series X. But really quickly, just a quick word from our sponsor today, and then we'll move into the PC findings. The Toner TC30 is a great value microphone coming in just over $40, link below for you to find it over on Amazon. It comes with a pop filter, in a shock mount, and with a little tripod for your desk. Everything is super easy to set up and get ready. Has a USB-C connection on the back. Comes with a USB-C to A cable. The audio you hear right now is recorded with the Toner TC30. It's a condenser cardioid type microphone. Very common for streamers to use a microphone like this. And the build quality is very solid for the money. Overall, considering everything you get with the microphone, it would compete with other microphones that cost twice as much or more. So if you're in the market for a affordable, good sounding, and easy to set up microphone, look at the Toner TC30 and give it a shot. It's available at Amazon with a link below. Alright, so over on the PC here, I'm going to go through the TV settings first. I did factory reset the TV, so there's no calibration here. And we're going to check how the HDR performs, both for the brightness, the midtones, and also shadow detail. So you can see here using HGIG. I'm going to show the difference here toggling this on and off. I do have to adjust the aperture of the camera so that you can see the highlights here. Alright, so with HGIG, you get full details of highlights. With it off, you get the same image, just no brightness in the highlights. Like, it just kills the highlights. But if you turn dynamic tone mapping on, then everything brightens up, but the highlights blow out. So definitely use HGIG, regardless of which platform you're on. Even though the game doesn't technically support HGIG, it's still the best option here. So now what I want to show is with the black level. This is important for later on. So when I'm playing on PC, my PC is set to full, as a PC should be. So if I switch between auto and full black level on the TV, you see no change because auto is correctly doing full. And then when you go to limited, then you see a change because then there's a mismatch in the black level between the TV and the PC. On consoles, it's going to be different, and we're going to get to that in a minute. So normally, I just leave it at auto, and it works fine. And again, PC is full. Consoles, for the most part, use limited. Again, we'll come back to that. Now I'm just showing really quick, everything reset using warm 50, color temperature, just all the normal stuff here. Nothing is going to get in the way of showing what's going on with the game right now. So I'm going to speed this part up a little bit, and you're going to see that it's set up as you would expect it to be on PC with G-Sync. Alright, so now we're going to go into the new HDR brightness settings of the game and try and figure out what we're supposed to do here. So what I can tell you is the left and middle image here is pretty much useless. So on the right, you have a sun, and my LG C1 tops out at about 680 nits on a 10% window, so that's a little over 700 on a small highlight like that. So it should be somewhere around 700. So I'm trying to adjust the camera so that you can make out the sun there. What you want to do, regardless of what TV you have, turn the brightness all the way down, and you're going to see how much of the sun is supposed to be there versus the sky. So you can see when it starts to get bigger or than what it's supposed to be, and that means it's like blowing it out. So this measurement does go up to 2000 nits, and it actually does fairly good job of matching what the TV is capable of. So I also did this on a KS8000 Samsung LCD, and at about 1100 or 1200, somewhere in there, is where it started to blow out, which seems about right for that TV. So now on my LG C1, 720 seems to be the good spot. That's where the sun goes from the little dot that it is to where it just barely starts to expand and have, sun rays and stuff coming off of it. That's where you want to put it. Now for the mid-tone, it defaults to 50. The problem there is that if you go into a shadowy area like this, everything's just blown out, washed out, does not look good at all. So on the Samsung LCD, the midpoint of 45 worked out pretty well for it. So if you have a LCD, I would start at 45 and go from there. And again, the image that you see in the setting here, the middle and the left, they're pretty useless because the one on the left, you don't know how much shadow detail is supposed to be there, how dark it's supposed to be. It's not like it's a image from the game that people would recognize or anything. So I'm using this spot as I've been here a million times before. I know when you go through this door right here, it should be like really blown out and bright and give that effect as you're going through the door, and then it balances out. And I know when you go in the room, you're supposed to be able to see the floor as you're a little bit further away, and then as you get closer, it turns black. So that's what I'm looking for. Also, on my C1, I found setting the midpoint to 40 to be the best setting. If it's under 40, then you start to see more black crushing or shadow detail is lost. And if it's over 40, then you see like glowing dark areas or things are overblown. So now over on the PlayStation, I'm just setting the TV settings correct here. And also I'm on the screen for the PS5 to set the HDR parameters. And so I have the TV in HGIG still. I have the black level set to auto, like I would always have it. For the PS5 setup, I go all the way dark and then count 14 clicks, which is roughly 800 nits or so, which is what you should do for an OLED. It's right when the sun disappears. And on the black level screen, I always just go all the way darker, as low as you can go for 0 black. And then my PS5 in its settings is set to all automatic, and typically there's no problem with that. So now going into the game's settings, gonna do the same thing as on the PC and then also on the Xbox, using 40 for my midpoint and 720 for peak brightness, although I am checking on each device. And then this is where you see that there's a problem. This whole HDR setup appears to be pretty broken on the PlayStation 5 right now. So what we're going to do is we're going to turn peak brightness down, and you can see going under 700 and just keep going down, that sun is not showing all of its detail and getting as small as it was until I go way too far down, and it's just looking constantly blown out. And the midpoint is looking way too high, and again everything's just washed out and looks really bad. So one of the big problems here is there seems to be a range mismatch where the PlayStation again is on auto and the TV is on auto for the HDMI black level or range level, and it's not correct in this game. So I'm sitting here trying the midpoint up and down to try and show this, but you can see there's very little happening with the midpoint setting, and no matter where I put peak brightness, the sun is pretty much blown out unless I turn it down all the way, and even then it's still not like it would look on the PC or the Xbox. So there is definitely an issue here with the PlayStation, and we're gonna try and fix this now. So the way this is going to work is I'm going to go into the PS5 settings, and we're going to change its range, and then we're also going to change the TV range until we achieve a match for the game, even if it means a mismatch for the TV and the system overall. So again, you go to RGB range, you can see it's on automatic, and automatic normally is full. So you see if I click it to full, nothing changes. The image is the same, the screen stays the same. But if you go to limited, it blacks out and it switches. That means when it's on automatic, it's actually detecting and running in full, just like my PC was. Now the thing is, whenever you play like 120 or HDR, it's going to switch down to limited anyway. So that's why you want it set to automatic, so that it can switch itself back and forth depending on what exactly you're playing. And the games are supposed to know this and be coded for this and work that way. So now again, I put the PlayStation back to full, and you can see if I change stuff on the TV, auto and full look the same. It's only when you go to limited that then it switches the look, and then that means that there's a mismatch. So what I'm doing now is I'm going to go back into the game, and I'm going to change the setting on the TV first and make some changes, and also just look here and see what's happening. So if I put the TV to limited and adjust the camera so that you can make this out as well. So again, full auto the same, but when I switch it to limited, then you see a difference. The problem though is that's not enough. That helped and pretty much fixed the low and mid-range part of it. However, our highlights are still blown out. So having the PlayStation 5 in its automatic/full mode and then having the TV in limited, if I set the HDR point to where it should be, I still get a blown out sun. But the midpoint, I'm able to see that there's change in the black level and the mid-range. So now what I'm going to do is go back to the console settings here and change the range here to limited as well. So now I'm forcing limited on the console and the TV. And by doing that, the sun isn't blown out now. Now I can set the peak brightness correctly to the 720 nits for my panel. So Bungie needs to fix this range issue. Otherwise, you're going to have to make these changes when you play Destiny and then switch them back for other games. And I honestly haven't played that many games on the PS5, so I'm not sure if other games do have this problem as well. But at least I can tell you right now, as of the launch of the Witch Queen, the range is really messed up in Destiny 2, and it seems to only be on the PS5. So we will get to the Xbox next and show that there's no range problems there, but there are still issues with the HDR and the lighting and some other things. So we'll get to that in a minute. So this is just showing now with the PlayStation and the TV forcing limited, my midpoint of 40 and highlight setting of 720. It looks pretty much the same now as it did on the PC, and also how it will on the Xbox when we get over there. But first here, I adjusted the camera again so you can make out the highlights in the clouds up here. And I'm just showing that how auto and limited now are the same because the console is set to limited. So you could leave the TV at auto and it's going to be the same as limited when the console is forcing limited. But if you go to high, then there's the mismatch and it messes it up again. So now we're going to go over onto the Xbox. Sorry, it seems a little fuzzy. I had to back the focus off just a little bit so that there wasn't moire in the image. But I was just showing that in the menu, Dolby Vision is off. This is just HDR10 right now. And I'll adjust the camera in a second, showing that the Xbox is set up with all the same settings as well. And here we have HGIG on and black level set to auto. And the Xbox is also on its standard range, which is correct. That's basically limited, which means the TV in auto is also detecting limited, and it's the same either way if it's on limited or auto. So again, no changes in any of the other settings, and the AI settings are off. So here, the problems on the Xbox side of things is, again, still just the game, and that the HDR performance just isn't good with the default settings. So if you were to load into it and not change them, it's not going to look very good. At midpoint 50, it's washed out, and if you have your HDR settings still at the default 1000 nits, it's just going to be overblown. So again here, just playing with the peak brightness, going back and forth, trying to find that exact spot where it's not going to blow out and be too high, but it's not too low that I'm leaving brightness on the table. So about 720 is where I keep it. And then showing here at like 45 for the midpoint, it's still just a little washed out looking. So it's where I settle on 40 for the midpoint with the OLED. Alright, so before we get into Dolby Vision, let's just recap right here that if you have an OLED, midpoint at 40, your brightness is going to be somewhere, let's say mid to high 600s through the mid to high 700s, depending on which OLED you have. For mine, again, 720. If you have an LCD, if it's a very bright LCD like a high-end Samsung or Sony, I'm thinking you're going to probably be in that 1200 range. Certainly 1000. If it's not a super bright LCD, just same process. Pull the HDR brightness down and then start going up until you see that sun just barely start to expand and kind of flare out a little bit, and then stop there. And then for the midpoint, I think 45 will probably be pretty good for most LCDs, depending on local dimming performance. If you have a local dimming LCD, then maybe 40, somewhere in there. Just play with it. If it looks like you're crushing some dark detail, then turn it up a little bit. But if it's starting to make the blacks look glowy, then turn it down. Alright, so now switching over to Dolby Vision. Now, Dolby Vision has quite a bit of issues, especially with gaming. And on the LGs, without a calibration, the Dolby Vision game mode is extremely inaccurate, way overshoots the EOTF, is way too bright in the midtones. So I don't recommend playing in Dolby Vision on any game. But aside from that, going through showing that all the settings are normal, as they should be. And the one thing that is on a positive side here, playing this in Dolby Vision, is if you're someone who's not going to play with these settings in the game, it actually works out pretty well because Dolby Vision has more tone mapping. So when it defaults its brightness to 1000 nits, Dolby Vision can tone map that so that you get your detail. The midpoint still makes it look a little, washed out looking or whatever, but for, the average person that doesn't even know this menu's here and they're just going to turn it on and play, I guess Dolby Vision could potentially be a better thing for them. But if you're watching this video and you're going to go in here and you're going to change your brightness to match your own panel, then you're much better off doing that with HDR10 and using HGIG. But to start with here, I'm going to show in Dolby Vision, even if you turned up the brightness a bit to 1100, which certainly would be too much for an OLED, but it is tone mapping it down, so nothing's blown out. It's bright as it should be, although actually a little too bright again because of the way LG Dolby Vision game mode is. Keeping the midpoint at 40, it doesn't look too bad. So now I'm going to go back in here and turn this up to 50, which would be, the default midpoint. And again, now you can see how it's a little blown out. The weapon is certainly blown out. I'm adjusting the camera so that there's no over or under exposure. So that's how it was actually looking right there. So then I spent a little bit of time here just playing with the peak brightness setting here in Dolby Vision But again, using that midpoint of 40 certainly seems the best option on OLED, whether it's in HDR10 or Dolby Vision. And then again, here if I drop the brightness down to 720 where I was using, it still doesn't look right. And again, that's probably mostly because of just Dolby Vision gaming. You can see the midtones, like the floor and stuff, just a little too bright. And now the interesting thing here too is when I turn around and go out this door, normally it should be so bright and bloomy that it's like blinding. Um, but with this current setting with Dolby Vision and setting the HDR brightness, you can see all the way out there without that bright blooming effect that you're supposed to see. So it's not right. But if you were to set the brightness back to 1,000 or so while being in Dolby Vision, then it does do that blooming doorway thing, that it's supposed to do. And then you can look up into the sky and nothing's going to be too overblown, and you're going to still have the detail up in the clouds that you should have. And right here, like those rocks are just too dark. So again, Dolby Vision, if you're just someone who's not going to touch settings, I guess it's all right. But if you're going to adjust the settings to the TV, then keep it in HDR10 for sure. And then make sure to use HGIG, and then just set the settings appropriately to the TV that you have. So I originally planned to do a very quick video about this, but ended up going ahead and doing everything here, trying all 3 platforms and finding out that the PlayStation is pretty messed up right now. Hopefully they fix that soon. But that's going to be it. Thank you all for watching. I hope this helps you out. Enjoy the Witch Queen. It's been great playing, and I'm going to go play myself, and have a good one.